attorney Gloria Allred. Today we filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court. In her lawsuit, Thalia, through her attorneys, sues Sean Diddy Combs. Defendant Combs and another defendant viciously and violently forcing sexual contact, oral sex, and sexual intercourse on the plaintiff. Defendant Combs and another defendant raping plaintiff and recording it. Defendants caused plaintiff to be depicted in a video image, unclothed and with intimate body parts exposed, and engaged in sexual conduct with another person. Defendant Combs and another defendant published the videos, including by selling it as pornography through the present.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I am your host, Jim Chapman. Before we get into today's episode, I have a couple of Patreon global celebrities to shout out today, and the first is Miss Ida Cruz Hackman. And Miss Ida is from Willow Street, Pennsylvania. And that is a state I have never been to, but I always wanted to go to. I actually wanted to check out the Hershey, Pennsylvania area at some point in the next couple of years. So shout out to you, Miss Ida. And also Miss Carolyn Rigby, who is from Yorktown, Virginia. And y'all, a lot of history in Yorktown, Virginia. Of course, one of the 8 original colonies. It was founded in 1682. I'm sure they got a lot of history there. Me being a huge history buff, probably a place I'd like to check out at some point. So welcome to the global celebrity tier, Miss Carolyn. And quickly, if you'd like to support the show on Patreon, we drop bonus episodes there. We drop every episode early and commercial free. I put files that I talk about on this show on Patreon as well. And you get all kinds of interesting benefits with our global celebrity tier, including quarterly merch, shout outs, etc. If you can't be a patron supporter, I totally get it. Thank you very much to the Patreon celebrities. You make this show go. Thank you very much. All right, let's get into today's episode. And y'all, every time I turn around, I have something new to report on Sean Diddy Combs. However, I kind of expected those lawsuits at some point to start slowing down and kind of go away. I mean, we got like 14 of these lawsuits right now, but September 24th, yet another one has surfaced. And of course, this most recent lawsuit after he's already been incarcerated at what's known as MDC Brooklyn. And we're going to call this episode The Nail in the Coffin, and you'll see why as I go on. So before I get into the actual lawsuit, which I have in front of me, I want to tell you about the attorney representing Talia Graves, who is the beautiful lady that filed this lawsuit. Now, her attorney is a lady by the name of Gloria Allred. And if you've not heard of Gloria Allred, I'm going to tell you about her. And I'll tell you right up front, this lady is an absolute beast. There is no better attorney representing females that are the victims of sexual assault, which is what she specializes in. There are no better attorneys than Gloria Allred. She is the best in the entire world at what she does. Undisputed. So let's talk about Gloria Allred's experience first before we get into the lawsuit. And y'all, I'm going to tell you, this lawsuit in particular is extremely graphic. It's as graphic as I've ever read. So be prepared for that when we get to that point. But first, let's talk about Gloria Allred and the folks that she has represented over time. And she has been a lawyer for many, many years, y'all. And she is absolutely fearless. And she has covered some of the most high-profile cases of all time. And I'll start with telling you that she actually represented the family of Nicole Simpson in 1995 during the O.J. Simpson trial. Now, of course, she was not a prosecutor for the prosecutor's office, but she represented that family in both civil litigation, and she was the attorney making sure that, you know, when the media said things about the family, it was accurate information, because you didn't want Gloria Allred going after you. But obviously, the O.J. Simpson trial being one of, if not the most popular trial of all time in the United States, and I would say Murdaugh would be up there as well, a case that I'm also covering right now on Exposed. So that was in 1995. Now, in 1997, she actually represented a model by the name of Kelly Fisher. So let me tell you about that situation, because you may be like, who is Kelly Fisher? Well, when pictures surfaced of Princess Diana and the wealthy Egyptian by the name of Dodi Fayed, Allred held a press conference with model Kelly Fisher. Fisher claimed to be engaged to Fayed, promptly suing him for breach of contract. Allred told the media Fayed was, and it was kind of a popular quote, a frog in Prince clothing. Something a little more current, actually in 2004, she was the attorney representing Amber Fry. And Amber Fry, of course, the ex-girlfriend of Scott Peterson. Scott Peterson was the man in California that was convicted of murdering his wife. So she represented Amber Fry, who he was having an affair with, but Amber Fry was totally unaware it was an affair. She also represented someone by the name of Scary Spice. And Scary Spice actually took on actor Eddie Murphy, claiming that Eddie Murphy had fathered her child, and Allred was there and involved in that by representing Scary Spice. Later on in that case, actually, a paternity test was ordered, and Eddie Murphy was found to be the father of that child. But it wasn't just females that she represented. Actually, in 2007, she represented Britney Spears' former bodyguard, a guy by the name of Tony Barreto, in a case against Britney Spears. She represented Christina Hagen in 2010, who actually had a sexual harassment case against former Buffy the Vampire Slayer star David Boreanaz, and that was settled out of court. She represented Rachel Uchitel, who is best known as one of Tiger Woods' mistresses. She represented that client in 2010. She represented someone by the name of Ginger Lee, and Ginger Lee was a porn star who had an affair with a guy by the name of Anthony Weiner, who was a political figure. And actually her involvement, meaning Miss Allred's involvement in that case, forced Weiner to resign. In 2012, she represented Sharon Balick, who filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against Herman Cain, who was a political figure and actually at one point was going to run for president. So she has some pretty powerful representation cases prior to the Diddy lawsuit. I mean, in a lot of these against absolute billionaires. And this lady does not hesitate to go after them. So I can promise you that not only is Diddy Combs shitting his pants right now with Gloria Allred involved in this, but his lawyers are probably shitting their pants right now, because I can tell you they have absolutely no chance against this lady, if they had a chance at all anyway. But you throw her in the mix, they're in trouble. So let's get into the lawsuit itself that Talia Graves filed against Sean Diddy Combs. And I'm going to read you the facts of this case as they are alleged in that lawsuit. And it reads, plaintiff's family immigrated to New York City when the plaintiff was a teenager in connection with her mother's work. Her family ultimately settled in Queens, where she completed her education, and it was where she was living when she met Combs. Combs, at that time, was known by his stage names, Puff Daddy, Puffy, P. Diddy, Diddy, Brother Love, or Love, and is a prominent rapper, record executive, and businessman. And it kind of goes into his history of that. I'm not going to read all that to you, but goes into his business history and the size of his company and all those sorts of things. Then it goes into his history of lawsuits for sexual allegations in particular. Now, there's also someone else in this lawsuit that is named, and that is the bodyguard of Sean Diddy Combs. His name, he was known as Big Joe, and he's referred to in this document as Defendant Sherman. And he was employed by Combs as his bodyguard and head of security during the relevant time period described herein. Sherman is also the founder of Rhymes and Dines magazine, a New York state corporation. On information and belief, he has often distributed videos of his and his friends' sexual assaults through his pornography company. That's right. His bodyguard owned a porn company. The plaintiff met defendant Combs in or around late 1999 or early 2000 through her then boyfriend, who was an executive at Bad Boy, Combs' company. In addition to working together, the plaintiff's boyfriend and Combs had a personal relationship. Plaintiff frequently visited her boyfriend at the Bad Boy studio in New York City and attended events hosted at Combs' residence. Over that time, the plaintiff became familiar with Combs, and he knew about her relationship with her boyfriend. So in or around summer of 2001, the plaintiff, she receives a call from Combs concerning her boyfriend's employment at Bad Boy. He told her he wanted to meet with her in person to discuss her boyfriend's performance issues, as he put it. Her boyfriend was determined to climb up the ladder at Combs' record label, and as his romantic partner, the plaintiff was committed to helping him. So she agreed to meet with Combs. Now, let's stop right there for a second, and let me break that down for you. Sean Combs is calling this man's girlfriend saying, hey, I want to talk to you because I'm thinking about firing your boyfriend because he's not performing up to my standards, and I want to talk to you about that. Bullshit. He was plotting. Right? That's not going to happen in real life. If it was a legit scenario, it's just not going to happen. So it continues on, and it says, in retrospect, it was evidently a sick and twisted way of using his ownership and title at Bad Boy to abuse the plaintiff and show his power and ability to humiliate her boyfriend. So a few hours later, Combs arrived at the plaintiff's mother's residence in Queens with Sherman, his bodyguard, who was employed by Combs. Sherman was driving an SUV and Combs was in the back seat. After the plaintiff entered the vehicle, Combs offered her a glass of wine, which she accepted. Man, if she only knew what we all know now, right? She wouldn't have drank that wine. Combs began discussing concerns about her boyfriend's performance at work. Meanwhile, as the plaintiff drank what had been handed to her, she started to feel lightheaded, dizzy, and physically weak. In retrospect, it's clear Combs had caused a drug to be put in the plaintiff's drink, as a few sips of the wine had never impacted her that way. Combs and Sherman drove the plaintiff to Bad Boy Studio in Manhattan, and when they arrived, the plaintiff tried to get out of the car. She realized she was feeling weird and found it difficult to walk. She assumed this was her fault and did her best to act normal and followed Combs as he led her eventually to a couch in a private room in Bad Boy's studio. She later came to understand this was Combs' personal lounge and office at Bad Boy Studios. So Combs sat on the couch next to the plaintiff and he continued speaking to her. The plaintiff began feeling even more woozy and sedated. She then lost complete consciousness. When the plaintiff regained consciousness, she was naked and her hands were tied behind her back with what felt like a plastic grocery bag. The plaintiff shouted for help, and in response, Sherman, the bodyguard, lifted her up from the couch and forcefully slammed her face down on what was apparently a pool table. Shortly thereafter, Combs entered the room completely naked. Combs reached for a container of lubricant that smelled like menthol and proceeded to apply it to his penis. He then bent the plaintiff over the table, causing her feet to dangle above the floor, forcefully held her down, and anally penetrated her without her consent. Plaintiff is 4 feet 11 inches tall and only weighed about 103 pounds at the time. Plaintiff was unable to move, totally overpowered physically, in addition to being drugged and bound. The plaintiff screamed out in pain, but Combs continued to violently, anally rape her. He easily physically overpowered her, smashing her head down on the pool table while she futilely tried to wriggle out from under him. During the brutal attack, the plaintiff vomited in her mouth and on the table. At one point, she involuntarily defecated. Combs was undeterred. He wiped himself off, applied more lubricant, and without any acknowledgement of the plaintiff's distress, proceeded to vaginally penetrate her. The plaintiff experienced intense pain and burning sensations in her vagina and her anus. Plaintiff continued to scream for help because of the extreme pain she felt as Combs penetrated her over and over. She then lost consciousness again. The next time she regained consciousness, the plaintiff was on the couch and Sherman was standing in front of her with his bare penis in her face. That's the bodyguard. Sherman slapped the plaintiff in the face and forcefully inserted his penis into her mouth. Sherman slapped her yet again and continued to thrust his penis into the plaintiff's mouth. The plaintiff once again lost consciousness. When she next awoke, the plaintiff was on the couch, naked and alone in the room. The plaintiff was in severe pain and distress. Her anus and vagina burned, her face and wrist were bruised, and her genital area smelled strongly of menthol. She felt a liquid which she presumed to be semen dripping out from inside her. Oh, this is awful. What a fucking punk. Her dress was thrown over her. Her purse was on the couch next to her, and her bra was on the floor nearby. She did not even see her underpants. Terrified that Combs and Sherman would return, the plaintiff quickly got dressed and bolted out of the studio room where she had been raped. Still dizzy and weak, the plaintiff called a driver that her family regularly hired and she knew well. The driver picked her up from outside of Bad Boy Studios. She was disheveled, crying uncontrollably and suffering from agonizing pain. The driver drove her to the hospital and tried to convince her to report the rape and get a rape kit, but she was unable to leave the car. She was shaking and crying hysterically and terrified of what Combs would do to her and her family if she reported him. And y'all, there you have it. She just nailed it. If you're one of those people out there that say, how could this happen this many times and nobody say anything until Cassie finally spoke out against Diddy? It's because they were scared shitless. This dude was a billionaire. He will fucking kill you. And nobody will ever know what happened to you. He will just make you flat out disappear. That's why none of this was reported by these victims. This was a scary motherfucker. Unless you're someone that's, you have no fear of man. In that case, he ain't shit. But if you're scared of him, you're not going to say anything. You don't want to lose your life over this asshole. So the rape occurred and the lawsuit continues on. It says the plaintiff suffered serious physical injuries in the aftermath of the rape. As noted, she had burning in her vagina and anus and bruising on her wrist and face. In the days after the assault, she suffered prolonged anal bleeding and hemorrhoids. Because of Combs' power and notoriety, the plaintiff was afraid to report what had happened. She was involved in a divorce and custody battle at the time and feared that reporting the rape would cause her to lose custody of her young child. The plaintiff confided in her boyfriend, Combs' employee, hoping he would comfort and support her. But instead of supporting her, he discouraged her from disclosing the assault, telling her it could negatively impact his own career. Yeah, that would be the time to break up with him, right? Following the assault and multiple times over the years, both Combs and Sherman, they contacted the plaintiff and they would warn her to stay silent, threatening repercussions, including the plaintiff potentially losing custody of her son if she ever disclosed the assault. Because of their enormous power in the industry, including through their ownership and positions at the Combs corporations, plaintiff knew that they could follow through on those threats. The plaintiff told close friends that Combs and Sherman had drugged and savagely raped her, but as noted, she was afraid to report those attacks to the police out of fear that the defendants would follow through on those threats. She was even afraid to stay in New York City while Combs lived there. So with the help of a friend, she fled to Pennsylvania. The plaintiff has, in fact, relocated multiple times throughout the years in an effort to stay away from Combs. The plaintiff has suffered irreparable harm because of the brutal rape by the defendants, both Combs and Sherman, and she suffers from severe depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. She also has suffered suicidal thoughts and has attempted to end her life. The plaintiff lives in constant fear. She struggles with hypervigilance and experiences anxiety and panic attacks in social settings, preferring to be alone. Her need to hide to feel safe has strained her relationships with friends and family. The defendant's rape has also impacted the plaintiff's ability to engage in sexual acts with intimate partners. To this day, she cannot be in certain sexual positions without experiencing flashbacks of Combs violently penetrating her from behind. So on November 27th of 2023, all the trauma of that rape came flooding back to the plaintiff when her former boyfriend revealed to her for the first time that Combs and Sherman had recorded and published the video of the horrific attack. Earlier that month, Cassie Ventura had come forward and filed a lawsuit against Combs for subjecting her to years of severe sexual and physical abuse. That case had been settled one day after it had been filed. The plaintiff's former boyfriend invoked Miss Ventura's effort to hold Combs accountable and, for the first time, confessed it years earlier. But sometime after the actual rape itself, Sherman and Combs had showed him and a group of men, some of who were also employed by Combs, the video of the plaintiff being raped. He disclosed that Combs and Sherman had a pattern and practice of non-consensually recording women engaged in sexual acts and making those videos available to the public, including by selling tapes as pornography. A Bad Boy artist later corroborated in a text message that Sherman used to sell porn of him doing this to chicks, and that Sherman did this to a whole lot of women. The plaintiff's former boyfriend reported that he and the other men watched the recording of the plaintiff raped on a handheld camera while at Bad Boy Studio in New York. Combs, Sherman, and the other men made derogatory comments about the former boyfriend's relationship with the plaintiff in an attempt to shame him into cutting ties with the plaintiff and to cause her further emotional harm and embarrassment. On information and belief, the defendant continued to show the video of the rape to others over the years and through the present, and or sold the video as pornography. So the plaintiff, she was shocked and horrified that Combs and Sherman had recorded and publicized a video of them raping her. After over 2 decades spent trying to heal and distance herself from the experience, the plaintiff was devastated by this news. She felt as if her life had been turned upside down again, and like the rape had been happening again and again, even as she was trying to forget it. She experienced psychological distress. She plunged into a deep depression, started having suicidal thoughts, and she lives with the distress of knowing the video of her brutal rape is in circulation and that anyone, including her family, friends, and peers, could view it at any time. In a panic, she reached out to Sherman, that bodyguard, after learning about the tape, hoping to protect herself from further humiliation and convincing him to destroy the tape or provide it to her. But he did not respond. And then it goes, y'all, into his history of sexual assault, which we cover all the time. So I won't get into all of that. But I told you it was a graphic one. And indeed it was just absolutely disgusting. And y'all, I can't believe this asshole is just now going to be paying for all this stuff. And look, all the ladies that I've covered on here that have came forward are heroes. But how about the one that kicked all of this shit off? Cassie. Remember, y'all, she was the first. Were it not for Cassie having the absolute bravery of coming out and telling all that bullshit that Diddy had done to her, none of the other people in all likelihood would have came out, probably ever. And this asshole would still be walking around today doing the same things to just about every woman he came across. So there you have it. That lawsuit, it's hitting the news, right? This is just the other day from this recording. And guess what? Just 2 days later, on the 26th of September, another fucking lawsuit. This time filed by a Jane Doe. And I'm not going to cover this one in detail, y'all. I'm just going to kind of summarize it for you and tell you the circumstances behind it. So it was brought forth by a woman, and she alleged that she was drugged and sexually assaulted by Sean Diddy Combs. She's referred to in this lawsuit as a Jane Doe, and she claimed that her encounters with Diddy began in the fall of 2020 while she was abroad. An invitation from the rapper led her to an all-expense-paid trip that would ultimately set the stage for a disturbing 4-year ordeal. So she alleged that her interactions with Diddy were not entirely consensual. She said there were instances of manipulation and harassment and that she felt pressured into these sexual meetings with Diddy. And according to the lawsuit, Diddy arranged for her to visit various properties that he owned across major cities. And she named Los Angeles, New York, and Miami in particular. However, she asserted that these visits were orchestrated through coercive tactics employed by Diddy and his team, making her feel as though she had no real choice in the matter. Look, he was the world's best manipulator, right? And the lawsuit detailed some alarming incidents where the plaintiff claimed Diddy utilized spiked drinks to compromise her ability to consent. Imagine that. His MO, his whole freaking MO. One particular troubling incident occurred in April of 2022, and it involved forced sexual intercourse at his LA residence. She reported sustaining physical injuries during the encounters, including bruises and bite marks, which she can't account for. In another disturbing allegation, in July of 2022, Diddy reportedly forced her to use ketamine and other substances, and it led her to black out. Sound familiar? Following this incident, Jane claims to have, get ready for this, become pregnant, only to face immense pressure from one of Diddy's associates to terminate the pregnancy. However, ultimately, she suffered a miscarriage. So even after that miscarriage, the Jane Doe, she alleged that Diddy relentlessly attempted to maintain control over her life. He bombarded her with calls and messages until she felt compelled to meet with him again. And of course, this cycle of intimidation extended into July of 2024. Yep. Just a few freaking months ago. This guy's in all this trouble and he can't stop. That's why he can never be released from jail. Right there. The plaintiff expressed that she feared for her safety. She also stated that she observed Diddy demonstrating violent behavior toward other women, which exasperated her concerns. She claimed that Diddy had found ways to track her movements and monitor her communications, continuing to exert influence over her life long after their initial encounters. So that's just a quick executive report, I guess you could call it, of that newest lawsuit. I've got one more for you today. Now, it's important to note that this particular lawsuit was not filed recently. As a matter of fact, it was filed on May 8th of 2017, and it was filed by a female that was hired to be his chef. And the reason that I'm covering this is that honestly, nobody's covering it, number one. And number two, it speaks to the fact that these lawsuits against Diddy go back many, many years. I mean, he's been doing this shit forever, and it's just now hitting the fan. But this particular lawsuit was nearly 8 years ago. Here are the facts in that case. Cindy Ruda, who, as I said, was hired as a chef. So I'm going to tell you her story. It reads, the plaintiff began working as a chef for the benefit of the defendant, Sean Combs, at the home of Mr. Combs in Los Angeles, California in January of 2015. During this time, the plaintiff worked on the weekends from 9 a.m. until midnight or 2 a.m. The plaintiff worked almost every Saturday and Sunday and was paid a flat rate of $150 per day. In the middle of May of 2015, the plaintiff was asked to work as a chef 6 days per week from 9 a.m. to midnight. She accepted and was paid $150 per day. In June of 2015, the defendant offered the plaintiff full-time work as a chef. However, the plaintiff declined due to the unreasonable hours and pay. The plaintiff continued her regular weekend schedule on Saturdays and Sundays from 9 a.m. to midnight or 2 a.m. for $150 per day. On or around September 27th of 2015, the defendant offered the plaintiff in writing full-time work as an exempt employee chef. The plaintiff accepted and worked every day as the lead chef for the California residence of Mr. Combs. The plaintiff was required to report to work daily at 9 a.m. and to be available to work until midnight or 2:30 a.m., depending on the activities of and events hosted by Mr. Combs. The plaintiff was also required to travel with Mr. Combs when his work required him to appear at events outside of Los Angeles, California. The plaintiff was not provided additional income for days she was required to work until 2:30 a.m. or days when she was required to travel with Mr. Combs. So on or around October of 2015, when the plaintiff first traveled with Mr. Combs, the plaintiff complained about not receiving additional pay for having to travel for 8 days with Mr. Combs to serve as his personal chef. The plaintiff was told by the personal assistant of Mr. Combs and the estate director for Mr. Combs that the plaintiff would only receive her regular pay despite the required travel. That's bullshit. On or around December of 2015, when the plaintiff traveled for the second time with Mr. Combs, the plaintiff complained that she should receive additional compensation for having to travel with Mr. Combs for 14 days. I 100% agree with that. The estate director then asked the plaintiff to keep track of her hours and permitted the plaintiff vacation time. After her vacation, the plaintiff returned to her employment and was required to report to work daily at 9 a.m. and be available to work until midnight or 2:30 a.m., depending on activities and events hosted by Mr. Combs. Having been instructed to keep track of her hours, the plaintiff believes she would be paid per the hours she worked and reported. However, the defendant continued to pay plaintiff as an exempt employee. Plaintiff made no less than 3 more complaints regarding additional compensation for excessive work hours. However, the plaintiff was only paid the flat rate until her termination in May of 2016. In addition to her complaints regarding pay, the plaintiff also complained about inappropriate conduct and harassing confrontations while she worked. Here we go, right? During her employment, the plaintiff worked as a chef. She also served Mr. Combs and his guests the meals she prepared for Mr. Combs and his guests. And she was regularly summoned by Mr. Combs to prepare and serve entrees and appetizers to him and his guests while Mr. Combs and his guests were engaged in or immediately following sexual activity. On no less than one occasion, when the plaintiff was summoned by Mr. Combs to serve him a meal, as the plaintiff entered the room, Mr. Combs was naked and made comments about his body to the plaintiff and ultimately asked the visibly uncomfortable plaintiff if she was attracted to or liked his naked body. On no less than one occasion, while the plaintiff was in the kitchen preparing a meal, a male guest of Mr. Combs approached the plaintiff in the nude to ask her to look at and admire his balls after he engaged in sexual activity with another house guest. The plaintiff was mortified and complained to management. Plaintiff made multiple complaints to management about these and other instances where the plaintiff was exposed to activity and approached with conversations of a sexual nature. The plaintiff said that because of her complaints regarding pay and her complaints about the regular exposure to sexual activity and harassing conversation, she was lured into a situation where she could be accused of theft and ultimately terminated. It was known by house personnel that the executive housekeeper salvaged items discarded by Mr. Combs at his residence. In 2016, that housekeeper approached the plaintiff with a watch that the housekeeper said she had found in a garbage can. The housekeeper asked the plaintiff if she wanted it since it was thrown away by Mr. Combs. The plaintiff said sure, and the housekeeper told her to take it. In the days following, the plaintiff was accused of theft and told she would not be prosecuted if she returned the watch and signed a waiver of all rights and claims against the defendants as it relates to her employment. The plaintiff returned the watch, however, she refused to sign a waiver. The defendant ultimately terminated the plaintiff on May 8th of 2016. Throughout the plaintiff's employment, she was misclassified as exempt and not paid overtime, etc. And it kind of goes on to say a little bit more about the fact that they had her money for overtime and things of that nature. But even back in 2017, these fucking sexual harassment cases, etc., were hitting against Diddy, and no one was doing anything about it. Blows my mind. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do my closing, and after I do that, I'm not going to have that closing music I normally have because I'm going to play you in its entirety, if you're interested in listening to it, the press conference in which Miss Allred and Talia Graves held regarding the lawsuit that I told you about in the beginning of this episode. So it's the actual press conference. It's about 30 minutes in length, but it's very interesting, very detailed, and it is from, I guess you could say, the horse's mouth. So look for that right after I do my close here. Now this week, which y'all is September 30th through October 4th, I'm dropping 3 episodes this week. You got this one today, which this is Monday that this dropped. Tomorrow, which is Tuesday, I am dropping an episode of the very popular Murdaugh series. And we're going to continue with that. And then on Thursday, I'm dropping another Diddy episode in which I'm going to cover his life right now inside of MDC Brooklyn, which is one of the worst federal jails, y'all, in the country. And I'm going to tell you all about his life in there, who he's bunking with, how he needs to watch his back, all the things he's eating. I'm going to cover everything. So look for that to drop Thursday. Once again, 3 episodes this week, y'all. I'm working hard for you guys. I'm telling you, if y'all keep loving it, I'm going to keep bringing it. And y'all are loving it right now. Our downloads have went through the roof. I want to thank all of you for listening, sharing, doing everything you do to make sure Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite gets out there to the public. It's important that people know the truth, and you are a major part of ensuring that that happens. So thank you so much. We actually hit, and I say we, because this is all of us together that make this podcast go round. We actually hit number 48 on the Apple podcast charts in the society and culture category this week. That is no small feat. There are actually over 106,000 podcasts in that one category. And we broke the top 50 this past week. And it's all because of all of you and your support of the show on Patreon and your support of the show on whatever platform you listen to. Even if you're not a Patreon member, you're supporting it by sharing it and telling other people about it. And I absolutely love every one of you for doing that. So right after this, you can listen to that press conference. But for Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.
Thank you for coming today. I'm attorney Gloria Allred, and with me is our client, Plaintiff Talia Graves. Today we filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court, Southern District of New York, for our client, Plaintiff Thalia Graves, who is given permission to use her name. The case number of the 26-page complaint is 1:24-CV-07-201. In her lawsuit, Thalia, through her attorneys, sues Sean Diddy Combs, also known as the defendant, and another individual and other entities. The complaint alleges in part in the first cause of action that defendant Combs and another defendant committed a, quote, violation of New York City Victims of Gender-Motivated Violence Protection Act by viciously and violently forcing sexual contact, oral sex, and sexual intercourse on the plaintiff, end quote. In addition, the complaint alleges in the second cause of action that defendant Combs and another defendant committed a violation of New York civil rights law, quote, section 52-B, end quote, by, quote, raping plaintiff and recording it. Defendants caused plaintiff to be depicted in a video image, unclothed and with intimate body parts exposed, and engaged in sexual conduct with another person, end quote. The lawsuit also alleges that, quote, defendant Combs and another defendant published and or disseminated the videos without plaintiff's knowledge or consent. On information and belief, defendants have continued to disseminate the video, including by selling it as pornography through the present, end quote. In our complaint, we ask that, quote, defendants should be ordered to account for and destroy all copies of the video that are in their actual or constructive possession, custody, or control, end quote. And that, quote, defendants should be temporarily and permanently enjoined from further disseminating or publishing any intimate videos of plaintiff, end quote. We also allege in the third cause of action that Combs and another defendant committed a violation of New York City Administrative Code, Section 10-180, quote, recording and showing others the video of themselves violently raping the plaintiff. And the defendants disclosed an intimate image of plaintiff without her consent, end quote. As a result of these and other allegations in our complaint, we request that judgment be entered against defendants as follows. Awarding compensatory damages for all physical injuries, emotional distress, psychological harm, anxiety, humiliation, physical and emotional pain and suffering, family and social disruption, and other harm in an amount to be determined at trial. Awarding punitive damages in an amount to be determined at trial. Awarding attorneys' fees and costs pursuant to any applicable statute or law, including under New York City Administrative Code, Section 10-1104, New York Civil Rights Law, Section 52-B2, New York City Administrative Code, Section 10-180, and any other applicable statute or law. We're also seeking additional relief that the court may deem just and proper. As a result of what is alleged in the lawsuit, Thalia alleges that she has suffered and continues to suffer, among other damages, emotional harm, including mental anguish, emotional distress, humiliation, and physical damage. In a few minutes, Thalia will speak to the impact and harm that she has suffered and continues to suffer. She will take this courageous step because she thinks that it is important that the public understand the impact that rape and other criminal acts have on those who have been victimized. Often victims do not speak publicly about the specific damages that criminal acts cause them. Some of the many reasons that victims do not speak out publicly about this include being ashamed or shamed for this. But we believe that victims should not be shamed, and instead those who committed the criminal acts against them should be ashamed and take responsibility for the harm that they have caused victims to suffer. We are very proud of Thalia for speaking out today in order to help victims of rape and other acts of sexual violence against them. In addition, we thank our co-counsel, Marianne Wang, Heather Gregoria, and Jasly Liriano for their exceptional legal work on this complaint. Our goal for Thalia is very simple. We want justice for her, and we are looking forward to winning it. It is long overdue for those who have caused her to suffer to be held accountable.
The internal pain after being sexually assaulted has been incredibly deep and hard to put into words. It goes beyond just physical harm caused by and during the assault. It's a pain that reaches into your very core of who you are and leaving emotional scars that may never fully heal. Some of the hardest parts of this pain are the shame and the guilt I have experienced that plays a negative part in my day-to-day ability to function properly. Being blamed, questioned, and threatened has often made me feel worthless, isolated, and sometimes responsible for what happened to me. My family issues made the pain even worse. I was already going through a divorce at the time of the assault and did not get the support that I needed. I was also faced with disbelief and judgment. This has put a strain on my selection of men and relationships. Where many relationships became aggressive and abusive, which has made me feel even more alone in my struggles. I go through spells of being distant and withdrawn that it's sometimes so hard to leave my house. The trauma of the assault has taken a toll on my mental health. I've had PTSD, depression, and anxiety. I'm emotionally scarred. It has been hard for me to trust others, to form healthy relationships, or even feel safe in my own skin. Flashbacks, nightmares, and intrusive thoughts make me feel like it's a constant struggle. I also suffer with physical problems such as chronic pain, sexual discomfort. The violation I have experienced during the assault has had lasting effects on my body, causing ongoing health problems and complications. The combination of physical and emotional pain has created a cycle of suffering from which it is so hard to break free. I want to continue on this journey towards recovery and healing. I am glad that he is locked up, but that's a temporary feeling of relief.
Thalia is not going to be taking any questions, but I'll be happy to take some questions.
Gloria, can you talk about the context of this assault? What, where, when, what occasion?
Question is, can I speak about the context of this alleged assault? No.
Gloria, can you just speak on, I know it's difficult for your client going through this, but what prompted her to come forward now?
It was time to file this lawsuit.
Gloria, what do you know about the video that was allegedly recorded during the alleged violation?
Question is, what do I know about the video that was recorded?
Yeah, what do you know? Where is it now? Is it still? Where is the video?
Yeah. There are many details in the complaint.
Gloria, did
The
the
complaint alleges that it was taken without her knowledge and consent, that she wouldn't have consented, that it was then published and viewed by others, and may still be out there being viewed.
Or did the allegations in this complaint overlap in any way with the criminal charges against Mr. Combs?
The question is, does this complaint overlap with the criminal charges that have been filed? My understanding of the criminal charges are that the charges are sex trafficking, RICO, and transportation of a prostitute. We are not alleging any of those criminal charges in our complaint.
Has she been in touch with federal prosecutors at all?
Question is, have I been in touch?
Has you or your client been in touch with federal prosecutors about her allegations?
About this? I have no comment.
Gloria, what about a grand jury?
Pardon me?
Grand jury, federal prosecutors, or grand jury, has Ms. Graves spoke to either?
Is the question, has she testified before the grand jury? Is that the question?
Yes.
Let's put it this way. I never comment on whether any of my clients have testified before the grand jury or will testify before the grand jury, since the grand jury is a secret proceeding.
Gloria, this other defendant in the video, alleged defendant, is this a celebrity?
Is the other defendant alleged to be in the video, and what was the remainder of your question?
Is that person, that alleged defendant, is that person a celebrity?
Is the person that has not been named by me a celebrity? Not as far as I know.
Gloria, as disturbing as the video may be, have you yourself laid eyes on the video?
Have I looked at the video? No. I have not viewed the video, nor do I wish to view the video, nor should anyone else view the video, with the exception of if law enforcement and a court believe that they should and are permitted to view a pornographic video as evidence in the case. If they have it, then that would be it.
Gloria, just to be clear,
We don't ever view pornographic videos, even if they might end up being evidence in the case, and we do not transmit any such video, if we have it, to any other person, because we do not think it is permitted under the law.
Gloria, Elizabeth Wagmeister from CNN.
Would you please speak up? It's hard to hear you.
Yes, sorry, I'm back here and a bit short. In the complaint, you noted that your client learned about this video in November 2023. That is around the time of the first public lawsuit, at least, against Sean Combs from his ex-girlfriend Cassie. I'm curious how you and your client learned about the existence of this video.
You're saying that this incident is alleged to have occurred about the time of another lawsuit having been filed? I'm sorry, I can't understand your question.
Per the complaint, this alleged incident occurred in 2001, but your client learned about the existence of the video in 2023, more than 20 years after. I'm curious how she learned about the existence of that video.
Yeah, so the question is, she alleges that the incident took place in 2001, but you are saying that it is alleged in the complaint that was filed that she learned about it in 2022. And then the question is, how did she learn about it? we have no comment in response to that question.
Gloria, has Diddy reached out to your client?
Excuse me?
Has Diddy reached out to your client?
Question is, has Diddy reached out to her? We will not comment on that either.
Gloria, I know this is very difficult for your clients, but would you be able to share a little bit of her background? Where did she come from? Or what did she do? Can you give us some details about your client, please?
No, I can't provide further details about where she came from or what she does.
Gloria, to your knowledge, has any law enforcement agency reviewed this video for possible criminal charges?
So is the question, has any criminal law enforcement, well, is the question, has any law enforcement agency
Viewed the video for possible criminal
viewed
charges?
the video? I'm not able to answer that question.
Your client says that she was threatened after this alleged attack. Can you elaborate on those threats?
Question is, can I elaborate on the allegation that she was threatened after the attacks? And no, because really I'm not able to comment on or expand upon any evidence or anything that might have evidentiary value at this time.
Gloria, there's an allegation in the lawsuit that the video was made available for sale. Can you elaborate on that? And was Mr. Combs
There's an allegation that the video was made available to whom?
for sale?
Oh, that was made available for sale.
Correct. That's new. There have been other accusers, other women who have said that they believe they were filmed and that the videos were shared, but I think this might be the first complaint allegation that the video was made available for sale somehow.
I have not compared what we have alleged in the lawsuit to what others have previously alleged in their lawsuits. So I can't tell you whether this is the first that has alleged that this video was made available for sale or not.
Would Mr. Combs be involved in that alleged sale?
Yeah. There are no other details that we can provide
So you
in
filed
reference to the videos.
So you filed it today, right? That was respect to that lawyer.
Yes, the lawsuit was filed this morning. And we have a case number, which I have provided, and we will pass around and provide my statement, which includes the case number. And this is part of the first page of the complaint. So you want to stand up and hold this? Okay. Want to stand up? Are you able to? And there is a redaction on what we're showing you. So just to tell you.
And to your right, please.
This is the first page in part and redacted.
Thalia, to your left, please.
Pardon me?
Thalia, on your right, if you both can look this way. Thank you. Thank you. And right below her.
Oh, okay.
Just right ahead.
And one more this way, please.
And I'll leave this on the table
Thank you.
afterwards.
Gloria, there's a few networks here that are Spanish speaking. We're wondering if your client might be able to give us statement in
Okay, we can
Spanish. You
sit
can speak
down.
Spanish?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I do not understand your question.
After you're done with the English section of the press conference, if your client speaks some Spanish, would she be able to give us a few words in Spanish?
You speak Spanish?
Pardon me?
No,
Would
she
she
can't.
please pronounce her name on camera just so we have the correct?
Do you want to pronounce your name?
Talia Graves.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Miss Gloria, Are you in contact with the person who told your client about the video described in the lawsuit?
We cannot disclose who we're in contact with in order to have investigated this claim or any investigation that may ensue after this press conference.
Gloria,
I want to add that if any other person has any evidence that might relate to our complaint, we, of course, would be happy to speak on a confidential basis with any person who may wish to contact us and provide us whatever evidence they wish to provide, and we would thank them for it.
Your client has said that she suffered years and years of trauma, depression, anxiety because of this alleged attack. Did she come to you after the indictment last week? I'm asking because I'm wondering if those charges...
Okay, the question is, did she come to me after the indictment last week? No.
And as a follow-up, how is your client feeling after those 3 charges were brought against Combs, even though he denies them?
How is she feeling after
The charges?
After the criminal charges
Yes.
were filed?
Yes.
And that he has been arraigned. Okay. Do you want to comment? No, we're not having your comment. I'm sorry. I would say overall it's been a very stressful and anxiety-producing experience, and she's lived with all of it for many years, and is reliving it now. I think she did comment on how she felt about the criminal charges at the end of her statement, and I'm not going to ask her to answer any other questions. With all due respect, it's a fair question, but she's just not going to be answering questions today.
Gloria, can you tell us how your client came to meet Diddy?
How can I tell you how my client
met Diddy?
Met Diddy. I am not going to expand on those details at this press conference, but any member of the public or press, is of course permitted to see whatever is in the complaint that has been filed in the Southern District of New York.
Gloria, has your client been in contact with any other victims?
Has my client been in contact with any other victims? Or alleged victims? I'm unable to comment on anyone with whom she has been in contact or who has contacted her, because those would be private conversations. So we will maintain the privacy of those conversations. For one thing, I don't know if whomever contacted her wanted their conversation to be confidential, so I can't comment on that. Thank you for the question.
Gloria.
Anything else?
Yes, Gloria, this tape, was it secretly made, or was your client aware that she was being taped during the alleged assault, and now it's found out that the tape is out there? Or did she never even know that she was being taped during the alleged assault?
I can't comment on the degree of consciousness or lack of consciousness or awareness of Thalia during the alleged rape and during the alleged video taping of the rape. I can say that she would never have consented to the videotaping and did not consent and did not authorize the videotaping, in the same way that she alleges that she would never have consented to be victimized in the way that she alleges that she was. And I think you could see today how upsetting it was for Thalia to have to learn and experience what she alleges that she did learn and experience from that horrific time.
Talia, I'm so sorry. Gloria, are you representing any other women that may also be suing?
Am I representing any other women?
Other than her? That are
In reference to
that are
or
suing
men,
specifically?
or men, in reference to Diddy. Yes.
So there's other claims. There are other.
This is the first lawsuit that we have filed. And in answer to a question which you have not yet asked, but probably will, am I going to file other lawsuits? I just don't have any comment on that at this time. Any other questions? I think
So I
that will
didn't.
conclude.
I didn't hear you when I asked if you would be able to comment in Spanish if she speaks any Spanish.
No. The answer is no. She is not going to be doing any interviews in English, Spanish, or any other language.
But does she speak Spanish?
But thank you for asking.
Does she speak Spanish?
I don't know. Any other questions?
I just have one last question, Gloria.
Okay.
As far as the video
One
goes,
last question.
One
Go
last
ahead.
question. As far as the video goes, do you know, or does your client know, if there has been more than one copy or multiple people have a version of the video?
I'm not able to comment on whether we know if there is more than one copy of the video. If there is any witness who wishes to contact me confidentially to tell me that they know that someone else has a copy, or that they have seen it or been told that someone else saw it online, we would be happy to speak to that person. Is there any, I think that's
No,
all
Gloria,
the
just one more
questions.
question. Just for our reporting purposes, is she a New York native?
Is she a New York
Native?
native? I can't tell you at this time if she is a New York native. She does not reside in New York at this time.